The priestly fraternity of St. Pius VI has formally rejected the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith's request to postpone the episcopal consecrations announced for July 1st. This is not a rumor. These are not interpretations. There is an official statement dated February 19th, signed by the 5 members of the General Council, including Bishops Alfonso de Galarreta and Bernard Fellet. It is a clear position. It is a collegial decision. It is a public document. The decisive meeting took place on February 12th in Rome. On one side was Father Davide Pagliarani, Superior General of the Fraternity. On the other was Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernández, Prefect of the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith. On the table is a proposal defined as a path of specifically theological dialogue, with the stated goal of identifying the minimum requirements necessary for full communion with the Catholic Church. But the proposal wasn't neutral, it was conditional. The condition was the suspension of episcopal consecrations. And here, the rift occurred. Father Pagliarani's response, sent on February 18th and published in full on FSSPX.news, leaves no room for misunderstanding. We thank you for the meeting. We recognize the importance of doctrinal dialogue. But it is also remembered that in 2019, it was the fraternity that proposed a structured theological debate, at a time when it is claimed no real interest had come from Rome in deepening the differences. The theoretical willingness to dialogue remains, but the idea of discussing under pressure is rejected. The logic of forced postponement is rejected. The approach that speaks of minimum requirements is rejected. Because the issue, it is argued, is not minimal, it is radical. The text states that the fundamental disagreement concerns the interpretation of the Second Vatican Council and subsequent doctrinal and pastoral developments. This is not a marginal dispute. It is the crux of the matter. It is the fault line that has crossed the Church for decades. If the conciliar texts and the liturgical reform are considered non-negotiable by the Roman authorities, what concrete room is left for discussion? If the conclusions are already established, what sense would a new theological discussion have? It's not just a procedural issue, it's a question of conscience. That's how it's defined. And when we talk about conscience in the ecclesiastical context, we touch on the most delicate ground. The fraternity maintains that it cannot accept either the postponement of the consecrations or entry into a dialogue built on the determination of preliminary conditions already implicitly defined. The criticism is not generic, it is detailed. It draws on the experience of the doctrinal discussions held between 2009 and 2017, which concluded, according to the fraternity's reconstruction, with Rome's unilateral definition of the conditions for full communion. The memory of that journey weighs heavily today as a precedent that encourages caution. But the tension doesn't stop there. Meanwhile, in various ecclesiastical circles, the word that no one would like to pronounce openly has been evoked again: schism. If episcopal consecrations without papal mandate are actually celebrated, the risk of a formal rupture will no longer be merely theoretical. A historical precedent has already been encountered. In 1988, episcopal consecrations performed without a mandate led to very serious sanctions and a rift that has scarred entire generations. Today, the ghost of that wound looms again. Yet the picture is made even more complex by another element, which has been forcefully highlighted by authoritative voices in recent months. Bishop Athanasius Schneider has openly spoken of a double standard. On the one hand, firmness, warnings, and possible sanctions against the society. On the other hand, agreements and recognitions towards bishops approved by the Chinese Communist Party within the framework of the agreement between the Holy See and the civil authorities in Beijing. The question that is circulating, increasingly insistent, is this: why so much rigidity towards those who claim fidelity to liturgical and doctrinal tradition, and so much flexibility towards ecclesial structures influenced by a political regime that limits religious freedom? This isn't a superficial controversy. It's a question that touches on the perception of fairness in the exercise of authority. The Society doesn't speak of schism. It doesn't use that term. But it refuses to suspend consecrations it deems necessary to ensure sacramental and pastoral continuity. From the Roman perspective, however, consecrating a bishop without a papal mandate is a very serious act. Two competing logics. Two ecclesiological visions clash. On the one hand, the need for visible unity and juridical obedience is insisted upon. On the other, the priority of doctrinal fidelity and conscience is invoked. When these two dimensions conflict, tension becomes inevitable. The climate has also become heated due to the timing. The Vatican proposal came after the announcement of the consecrations and was accompanied by public warnings of possible sanctions. This detail was emphasized in Father Pagliarani's response. For the fraternity, the imposed condition alters the serenity of dialogue. We thus enter a phase in which every word weighs, every gesture is fraught with consequences. July 1st isn't just any symbolic date, it's a concrete deadline. If the consecrations take place, the rift could take on a formal character. It wouldn't just be called an irregular situation, it would be called an explicit rupture. Many faithful view this scenario with apprehension. For some, the fraternity represents a stronghold of tradition. For others, it continues to reject a path of full ecclesial integration. But what is disturbing is the feeling that the Church is going through a phase of increasingly marked polarization. It's not just about the Society, it's about a broader crisis involving interpretations of the Council, liturgical reform, relations with the modern world, and diplomatic agreements with political powers. In this context, the refusal to suspend consecrations appears as a gesture of defiance. For some, it is an act of fidelity. For others, it is a step towards separation. The positions have been filed. The letters are public. The conditions are clear. Now the final decision remains. Unless there's a sudden change, unless there's a gesture capable of healing the rift, July 1st could mark a historic turning point. And then we won't just be talking about tension. We'll be talking about a full-blown rupture. It's not just a disciplinary issue at stake. The very idea of continuity in the Church is at stake. The perception of authority is at stake. The consciences of thousands of faithful are at stake. History will judge, but the time for decisions is approaching, and the line between conflict and schism appears thinner every day. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment, Amen. God bless you.